So this is what I'm calling a smart bib, because it should, hopefully when finished, add a couple of buttons, look like a suit and tie. At least that's the intention. So what I've done is I've cut out all the pattern pieces in various fabrics that are quite sturdy and jacket-like. So I've got some nice kind of velvety stuff here. I've got a little bit of pinstripe and some linen, just to give myself some variation to work with. So what I need to start with first is the collar. Okay, so I have done the collar sewing on all the jacket pieces and all of the actual kind of shirt collar pieces, and now I'm going to put them through the wash. My intention is to stick them all, stick all the dark ones in a old pillowcase and wash them with dark wash. Same with the other washes. So that way I'm not going to bleed any colour out anywhere, but this way they're going to be clean and ready to go on to the next stage. I'm also, whilst I'm doing that, going to wash and press all the back lining as well, so that's ready to go. So wash them, dry them, trim, turn and press, so they're all ready for the next stage. Okay, so I'm working my way through the first kind of stage of this build. Because you've got different layers going on, you kind of need to be a bit more fussy about it really, because the layers need to fit together. So I'm using some, this is an old bed sheet, just as a kind of a liner, just to give some support to the jacket front. So I'm just tracing around the pattern, and then placing a mark on the collar where the very top edge of the lapel sits. I've got something to line it up against. Now, each of these I've trimmed to a point, but I need to trim a little bit more off of this inside edge so that it sits flat. Now this is going to leave some kind of bare thread, or kind of a raw edge on the very inside here. When I stick the collars on, I'm going to put a little bit of fabric glue just on that corner, just to stop anything from fraying, and then the collar on top to cover it. So, using the template here, I'm marking where the lapel hits the top, the lapel hits the collar of the bib, and then down here at the bottom of the fold. So that's ready to stick on. Before I do that, I'm going to stick on the tie. Now I'm using some nice kind of patterned fabric, so green and purple, and I've pinned up and folded the corners here so that I've got a point. I'm just going to slightly overlap that on the centre line here and just pin that down, which is again why I needed this extra bit of fabric, just as a lining and support for everything else. So I'm lining up this top pin with the mark there. Make sure everything sits flat. So that is straight to the centre line. Now I'm just going to transfer these pins over so that that's secure on there, and up here. Okay, so I've got the first side done with the tie on one side, stitched on one side here. So I'm just going to fold back the collar and pin that into place so I don't stitch it down by accident. Here I've got the other side. So I'm just going to stick a pin in at the top here. And I don't want this to be a square bottom. I don't know why I did that in the pattern. So I'm just going to push the corner in, like that, and then pull it out on a slight angle, like that. So that's going to sit up slightly. I'm going to use a template again to mark where the bottom of the fold is. Now I'm just going to line this up by the mark I made earlier. So that marks my top point, and then using the thickness, feeding through the thickness of the fabric so that this is in square, about there. So I'm just going to pin through. Gathering quite a bit of fabric here, which is why I didn't really want to use a lining. So what I've done is I've cut a template out of just some plain paper, and I've sewn that on to a doubled layer of fabric, so that way it gives it a little bit of body and strength. Kind of like starching a collar before you get there. It does make turning it through a little bit difficult, but if you kind of pinch as far down as you can get and hold onto the paper and then move everything else round it, that kind of reduces the issues that you might have with it. Obviously you're going to need something to poke out the corner. Could do being pressed, but it's going to get a pressing anyway when it's done, so that's fine. So I'm cutting it down to about 1/2 inch. Doesn't really matter that much, just getting rid of the bulk of excess, and a couple of notches just to help it bend. So again, going in and pinching as far into the point as I can, and then turning it back through. So this is the last one of these that needs a collar adding. So I'm just going to have a look at how this is sitting on either direction. That way and that way. When you turn these, you get kind of a slightly different kind of profile on the seam. So I want the whole profile this side and not the edge, because you can't see the edge from this direction. Gives it a better look. So it's got both fronts on. I need to do something to hold down the lapels. I'm going to press them again and see if that does it. If not, then a couple of stitches will do. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to pin these into rough position. Not concerned about any of the excess or whatever. I'll get to that later on. So I'm just pinning them so they can flap. They're sitting pretty much equal to each other. Then here I've got a very raw edge that's going to have no support on it, because that's kind of the two pieces of the collar come together here and that's cut out. So in order to give that a bit of strength, I'm putting on a dab of fabric glue just to kind of support the end fibre so it doesn't end up fraying or anything over time. Now I expect this is going to get a lot of washing, so that's going to add extra strength. I could have used PVA, but again, it's not fabric glue, it's not safe for washing multiple times. So that's those done. I've just got to wait for that to dry, and now I need to start on the pockets. Okay, so these have been left overnight for the glue to dry. On some of these it's stuck down, some it hasn't. That's not a problem. So now I need to work out where the pocket goes. So I'm using my template to mark, or to hold up and see where everything kind of fits together. So I've got an idea of the right spacing. Now I debated which side to put the pocket on, and I think this side is better. So to make sure that line is visible, so I've got an idea of the correct space for the pockets. Now these, I've just pinned these around onto some paper templates. I've already sewn the top seam, so that's just ready to go. So I'm just going to kind of offer this up round about where it needs to be. Now I've got to put a couple of buttons on as well, so I've got to think in terms of total spacing. Let's grab some. I've got a selection of kind of browns and greys here, which should work. Don't want them too small. About right. I just need to find a couple that match. Nope. Something like that. That one. Okay, close enough for now. So I don't want this to kind of look imbalanced against the buttons. So the question is, do I go with this side or that side? I think still this side is the way to go. Yeah, maybe. Okay. First I'm going to apologise for any background noise you might hear. The local council is taking down a dead tree pretty much right outside my front door, so can't do anything about that. So I'm going through all of these, putting press studs in using this device, which is branded No Fun, and pretty much is no fun. I've already got a nice kind of blister developing on a finger, and I've got a nice pile of failed studs as well, because if you don't get these exactly aligned, you end up with a whole load of sharp teeth that point out around the sides of the press stud, which, although interesting, is not really the safe way to do it, especially for a child's item. So I'm just putting 2 of the outy, nipply studs on one side, and then the inny ones on the other side. Now these bibs, I've been thinking about making these for quite some time, and I've been kind of stockpiling kind of pinstripe and other appropriate fabrics that would work for these. So I had a stack of enough to make about 30 bibs, which is good for a batch. And what I'm doing to make sure these are at least even is, if I put the first one on and line that up with the second nipply one, and then just mark the end of that so that the spacing is even, and then you can have 3 different sizes essentially of bib. So as your baby grows you can expand the bib size. And I'm using press studs, not buttons, because buttons are too stable, they're too solid, which is kind of the idea of having a button. But if you put a button on something like this, then the chances of the chances of baby choking or something if it gets caught are higher. So with this they'll just snap open if that kind of pressure's put on them. So I'm not going to put these together until I've hammered them in. So I've got this little tool that came with the kit, which hammers everything in so it's solid. You can put them together and then hammer them, but I prefer to leave them separate now. I've done enough of these to know that if you put them together and then hammer, there's still a risk they're going to come off. So as I was finishing these, I removed the paper insert on the pocket, and I've put a couple of stitches, or a cross stitch at the bottom of the collars so that it all sits flat and stays flat. So yeah, this one looks a little bit Bugsy Malone, I think, with the pinstripe. Now I'm debating whether or not to do a pocket hanky or pocket square. I may still do that on some of them, but not for this video. So my previous bib video has got in the region of about 20,000 views, and mostly in the last couple of weeks, so quite happy about that. And it would be nice if those people subscribed as well, but I think they're all particularly looking for bibs and burps, so I hope that this one gets similar views, and hope it sells well as well. These are going to have to be a little bit more expensive than my other ones because there is that much more work involved, but I'm going to include a full pattern on the blog. So the address is at the end of this video. So it was as full of a pattern as I can do, because I don't know how to work any of the pattern building things. So it's going to be a paint drawing with scales, but that's what I can do. So yeah, look for the pattern in the blog if you want it, and I'll see you next week. Actually, I'll see you on the 1st for the first part of Save a Life September. So get ready to learn something important, and I'll see you on the 1st.